With the NHL changing their offer sheet compensation for this upcoming free agency, there are two Toronto Maple Leafs players that may be affected by this. Also, there's been wild speculation, and today we got a report from Elliotte Friedman that the Calgary Flames are actively shopping Jacob Markstrom behind the scenes, and the Leafs, among two other teams, are the likely candidates to land him. And we're going to dive in depth on all of this coming up on this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we get into it, we got to say that 78% of you guys watching these videos aren't subscribed to the channel. So if you want to keep up that's on everything that's happening around the league, make sure down below and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything here. But with that said, let's get right into the first topic of the video today, which is new offer sheet rules may affect the Leafs. And yes, as we've seen here from Cap Friendly, we're not going to go through all of these, numbers with you guys, but pause the video if you want to, get more in depth on this. But we're going to talk about which ones affect the Leafs. And down below is a little explainer of what offer sheets are if you're not quite sure of what it means. So make sure to read that if you want to follow along with us here in the video. But the first guy that may be affected here is Timothy Liljegren, Mark. I mean, this guy, had a pretty solid season, right-handed shot guy for the Leafs, and, maybe losing him to an offer sheet is not an option that the Toronto Maple Leafs want to take. He does have arbitration eligibility this offseason, so we could see him go into arbitration, which would nullify the whole offer sheet thing. But if he doesn't, this would mean, if another team offers him a contract and the Leafs don't match it, they would lose him out for either a third or second round pick, is what they say in this article. They're more leaning towards it being a third round pick. And if we just bring up the graphic again, a third to second round pick compensation would put his contract at around 1.5 million to about 4.5 million, somewhere in that range is where they're expecting this offer sheet could come from. But Mark, Timothy Liljegren is the less likely option, just because, he has that arbitration thing going on. And I just think that, it doesn't make sense for them to skip arbitration for him for just to get another team to send an offer sheet his way.
Yeah, the big thing with Lilly is this was a guy the Leafs got pretty late in the draft in the first round when they did draft him. I believe he was dealing with mono for a good part of his final year before being drafted, so they did get him a lot later than a lot of teams expected. But the big thing with Lilly is we're seeing a development year after year where it gets to the point where he almost looks like he's breaking out as a top four defenseman. He takes a tad step back, step forward again, and it seems like he's just at the crisp of getting into his full game of being a top four guy for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So losing him would be quite bad. I mean, if a team offered him the 1.5 and it was around a third round pick, the Leafs are 100% matching this. But if a team goes out of their way and offers him, say, 4.5 over a 5 or 6 year deal, it's going to be hard for Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs to really look at Lilly and say, hey, we're ready to dump $5 million into this guy. So it's going to get quite interesting. I can't see a team willing to take this big of a risk and giving him a $4.5 to $5 million deal. But I think teams are really going to think about it. We don't see a lot of people get offer sheeted. I mean, we see a couple people, like I think Kotkaniemi was the last one. So I don't think we need to worry about losing Lilly, but I think it's going to be in the back of their head while they're navigating free agency.
Yeah, and if a team, is holding any grudges against the Leafs, this is a good way to kind of get back at them, kind of a petty way. Just the Kotkaniemi situation still has me rattled to this day. But I don't suspect this will happen for Liljegren just because of, the whole arbitration status. Like you said, if they do offer him, a low kind of contract, not in that 4.5 to $4 million range, I think it's an easy match for them. He's a right-handed shot defenseman that they need. He has played good over these last couple seasons, so it only makes sense for them to match any deals coming in for Liljegren. Only if it's like a big deal, like you said, then it wouldn't really make sense. Then they just get that pick compensation back. And, it would suck to see him go like that because, I mean, like you said, you got him in the late of the first round, so getting a third or second round pick for him back, was kind of a tough pill to swallow. But like you said, we haven't seen this in years. It could happen, but there's another player here that it's most likely to happen to if it is going to happen, and that is Nick Robertson. And as they say here, he's the only non-arbitration eligible RFA for this Toronto Maple Leafs side this offseason. And like they say here, Nick Robertson the Leafs are probably going to offer him in that free compensation range, which if we bring it up is the 1.5 million or less. And that would mean no compensation. So as we go back to the screenshot here, I mean, that would mean that if a team offers 1.5 or less for him and the Leafs say, hey, we don't want to match this, then they would lose him for nothing. But it just doesn't make sense that if a team offers that the Leafs wouldn't match it just to lose him for nothing. It doesn't really make sense that way. But maybe if we get up into that third round pick range, depending where the Toronto Maple Leafs are this offseason with Nick Robertson, what cap they have left after they figure out, what players they want to bring in, that could be a situation that does arise.
Yeah, the big thing with Nick Robertson, this guy is a future star in my opinion. It's just the lack of being able to consistently get in this lineup and injuries. And yes, people are going to say, hey, Robertson's not a star. But you look at Jason Robertson in Dallas, they have the same type of shot. They're both heavy forwards. Obviously, Nick Robertson is a tad bit smaller, but he can't consistently stay in this lineup due to injuries. Sheldon Keefe, when he was the coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, constantly scratching him, keeping him out of the lineup. I think a full season under Berube with Nick Robertson, I think he can really blossom. This was at one point in a couple seasons ago. Austin Matthews said Nick Robertson had the best shot on the team. That's coming from a guy that scored 69 goals this year. Obviously, he needs to stay in this lineup. It's a hard lineup to crack, especially if you're bringing back guys like Max Domi, Tyler Bertuzzi, you have Easton Cowan coming up. Matthew Nyes is emerging as the top six guy. You still have Nylander, Marner. There's so many forwards in this group, and it's hard to crack this lineup. But if Nick Robertson can have a full, healthy 82 game season, I think we're really going to see him blossom into a middle six or top six winger with an explosive offensive game. So losing him would be rough. I think the match will at least match anything at 1.5, 2 million. But when you get to the $3 to $4 million range, once again, if a team does get, if you want to say ballsy with it, you have a lot of teams like the Blackhawks, teams like the San Jose Sharks that have about $30 million in cap. If they want to do this to take a swing on a young guy, it's going to be hard for the Leafs to look at him and say, hey, we're willing to give you $3 and we still need to bring back Tyler Bertuzzi for a tad bit more. So things will get quite interesting with the Leafs RFAs.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly there. I've been a big Nick Robertson guy for a long time. I think he has a lot of potential in the NHL, and losing him for essentially, a lesser pick than what you drafted him for would be, like I said, a tough pill to swallow. Same with the Lily situation. But like you said, it's been a tough roster to crack for Nick Robertson. He's dealt with injuries and stuff like that. He does have the potential, in my eyes, to be a great middle six player in this Leafs team. It's just now that he has, a new coach behind the bench, I think that gives him a little bit more opportunity. I think, Sheldon Keefe had his reasons for leaving him out of the lineup, but now with Craig Berube behind there might give him another opportunity to, become the player that everybody wants to see from him. And I don't think that any of these players are going to get offer sheeted, but it is always an option. Nobody thought it when Kotkaniemi got offer sheeted, so, the option is always there. If a GM is salty at you or something like that, I'm just going to say it because that was the worst thing to go through as a Montreal Canadiens fan. I mean, Kotkaniemi, one of my favorite at the time, but I mean, it would suck to see any of these players go to offer sheet, but I really don't see it happening. But we're going to get into the second topic of the video today, which is Markstrom trade coming. And yes, as we see here from a New Jersey Devils writer, he says on the 32 Thoughts podcast by Elliotte Friedman, he said that the Flames are trying to do a Jacob Markstrom trade as quietly as possible, but there's definitely something going on. That's a direct quote from Elliotte Friedman there. He says a lot of people are suspecting the New Jersey Devils, but the Leafs and Ottawa could be other teams interested too. And if we just take a look at Jacob Markstrom's stats so far this season, he had 23 wins, 905 save percentage, a 2.78 goals against average, and 48 starts this year with the Calgary Flames. And Mark, obviously, Jacob Markstrom has been a top goalie in the NHL for quite some time. Yes, you could say maybe he's regressing at this point, but the stats don't show that. I think he's still a great goaltender. The Flames went through kind of a rough year, and I don't think, the onus is on Markstrom for their lack of success this season, but I think maybe a trade to Toronto, maybe the grass is greener on the other side within the Leafs organization, and it could be an interesting move for Brad Living and the Leafs this offseason.
Yeah, the big thing with the Flames, they have Dustin Wolf coming up, their goaltender of the future. They still have Vladar, a guy that can still play backup goalie minutes for them. So the biggest thing with them is looking at the best options. Obviously, it would be awesome to get him onto the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is a goaltender that's getting paid $6 million over the next 2 years, so $6 million per year, I should say. And if you're going to pick up a goalie in free agency, you might be paying more than this in the open market with so many teams looking for a goalie. I mean, the LA Kings are a team that's looking for a goalie, the Ottawa Senators, the New Jersey Devils, who have a high draft pick, which might kind of top everyone when it comes to trade bait for a guy like Markstrom. But getting him on the Leafs at $6 million per year, I don't think they're going to eat any salary. I mean, the salary cap's raising 300,000 more than we expected. So technically, if you want to look at it away, you're bringing them in at 5.7. So the biggest thing is you bring in a goalie that has been around, a goalie that can hold his own. We've seen him in the playoffs. We've seen him in the regular season. This is a guy that would be one of the most consistent goalies the Leafs would have had in recent memory. I mean, Freddie Anderson, before the injuries, was probably the best goaltender we've had since then, and Jack Campbell before he went to the Edmonton Oilers and kind of forgot how to play hockey. But bringing in a guy like this to kind of mentor Woll, the only issue I have with this, if you're giving Markstrom $6 million over the 2 year span, Joseph Woll's contract is up, I believe, at the end of this season. So if he has an incredible season, if he turns around and becomes the number one goaltender, then you're stuck in the situation of paying two goalies starting goalie money, and one of them can only be the starting goalie. It's not a bad situation to be in, having two guys that are number one goalies, but it's going to get interesting, and it's going to be interesting what Brad Treliving does to kind of fix this net that he wants to make as a Stanley Cup champion netminders.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the page where the Leafs don't really need a goaltender. I think Joseph Woll has played good enough to be the starter there. Maybe they pick up a backup in free agency that can split the starts, or if they have faith in Joseph Woll, ride him out for as many games as possible. But I don't think bringing in a number one goalie, yes, it would be great. I would love to see Markstrom on the Leafs because he's such a phenomenal goaltender. And like you said, at the cap hit of $6 million a season, you can't pass up on that if the opportunity does arise. And if Brad Living sees fit that he wants to trade Mitch Marner and he waives his no move clause to Calgary, then we could see a package deal which would bring in probably a defenseman alongside of Jacob Markstrom, which would be great to see. But in my personal opinion, Mark, I really don't see this happening. I just think that Joseph Woll, he's shown how good of a goaltender he was in the playoffs, and I think that the way it is right now, he could easily be a number one if he gets enough starts. I think he's just that good of a goaltender right now that you don't really need to risk bringing in another goaltender at this point.
Yeah, listen, Brick Wool has been outstanding. The only issue is, and I think Treliving and them know this as well, it's just Wool needs to stay healthy for a decent part or the whole season. We've seen the season where Samsonov went down. We've seen Joseph Wool go down. Martin Jones came in, was the starting goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs at one point. So I think bringing in a strong number two goaltender, not a starter, but a guy that can come in and be your 2B or your 2A or your 1B type goaltender would be the best. I mean, we've seen a guy like Jonathan Quick go to the Rangers. He's been outstanding as a backup goalie behind Shesterkin, even at an old age. So I think bringing in a guy that's to secure a great fringe starter that can play behind Woll would be the best. I mean, the Devils have, what is this, the 10th, the 11th overall pick. It's going to be hard for the Leafs to kind of outbid someone like that to get a guy like Markstrom.
Yeah, 100%. Unless, Mitch Marner is on the table, that first overall pick from New Jersey is going to topple everything that the Leafs are going to throw at him. And, I think that Joseph Woll, like I said, is a great goaltender. I think, like you said, if they bring in a guy who can split the starts, a fringe starter, we've seen more of this two-goalie tandem be adapted within the modern-day NHL, and I think that's kind of what the Leafs may go after here if they can't acquire Markstrom, and I would love to see that. But we're going to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think that Toronto should go out and get Markstrom? Let us know down below in the comment section. We're going to get in everybody's favorite topic here on the channel, which is comment of the day. And the comment of the day today goes to Matthew. Matthew says, in my opinion, Edmonton hasn't faced a team like Florida. I think if Bobrovsky is on his game, then Florida takes it in 6. And Mark, I mean, last night, didn't Bobrovsky, wasn't he on last night? I mean, what a game from him last night. What a performance from the Florida Panthers. Unfortunately, Canada's team is down 1-0, but I think they can come back.
No, I think Canada's team's up 1-0. I mean, when I'm looking at this, I'm a Canucks and Leafs fan. I understand everyone saying, listen, you have to cheer for the Canadian team. But if this was the other way around, if the Canucks were in the finals or if the Leafs were in the finals, there's no way the Oilers would be cheering for them. I'm a diehard fan of these two teams, and I'm not cheering for anyone other than those two. So if this finals stopped, never finished, that's fine with me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying it. I kind of want to see Florida win. I think it would suck to see them go to the final back-to-back years and just lose both times. That would just be heartbreaking. I don't want to see that happen. Obviously, I do want to see McDavid get his cup. I think the best player in the world deserves it. But I think it's going to be a fun series. I think that game last night was great, and I think the rest of the series is really going to be fun to watch. But we want to hear your guys' thoughts on the Stanley Cup final down below in the comment section as well. While you're down there, make sure to hit like on the video. Makes these videos get pushed out to all the Leafs and hockey fans out there on YouTube. And while you're down there, also hit subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss out on daily hockey content here on YouTube. And if you want to check out a video Mark did earlier today, it'll be popping up on your screen right now. But as always, I've been your host, KC, alongside my co-host, Mark Pye. Keep your stick on the ice.